Hello to all you amazing folks in the kindness in real life family. I'm so pumped to hang out with you today because we've got a story that's going to grab you. A talented designer, fresh off a breakup, gets drunk one night and wakes up in a stranger's penthouse, wearing his shirt, no less, only to discover he's her new boss and maybe the key to her heart. It's romantic, it's funny, it's warm, and it's all about how kindness can sneak up and change everything. If it hooks you, could you drop me one like? Just one like would feel like a big, cozy hug from you all, and I'd be so thankful. Straight from my heart, thank you. Ready? Let's jump in. Sophia Hamilton wasn't the type to wake up in strange places. At 28, she'd built herself into a fortress of confidence, unshaken by snarky fashion critics, brutal deadlines, or even the gut punch of a breakup. 2 years ago, she'd strutted across the stage at the British Fashion Awards, snagging the Outstanding Young Designer trophy with a grin that said, "I've got this." Manchester had been her kingdom, her groundbreaking designs turning heads and her sharp wit keeping everyone in line. But this morning? Oh, this morning was a whole different beast. Her eyes fluttered open, and the first thing she noticed was the ceiling. It wasn't hers. No peeling paint from her tiny cabin apartment. No familiar water stain shaped like a grumpy cat. This was a sleek, modern slab of perfection, glowing faintly under recessed lights. Her head throbbed like someone had taken a sledgehammer to her temples, each pulse screaming, "You idiot! What did you do last night?" She squinted, trying to piece it together, but her brain was a jumbled mess. Flashes of neon lights, thumping bass, and was it a martini glass? 3 martini glasses? She bolted upright, clutching a blanket to her chest like a lifeline, only to freeze when she realized she wasn't wearing her own clothes. Nope, she was drowning in an oversized white men's shirt, the kind of high-quality cotton that felt like a hug from a cloud, but did nothing to calm her rising panic. "God, Sophia, what the hell?" she muttered, shoving her tangled brown curls back with shaky hands. Her eyes darted around the room, taking stock. Glossy black leather chairs, a glass table that looked like it cost more than her rent, and a massive abstract painting with blue streaks slashing across it like a moody ocean. Floor-to-ceiling windows stretched along one wall, framing the Thames glittering faintly under a foggy London sunrise, with Tower Bridge poking through the mist like a postcard come to life. This wasn't Camden. This wasn't even close. Her bare feet hit the cold hardwood floor as she slid out of bed, tugging the shirt down to cover her thighs. "Okay, detective mode," she whispered, scanning for clues. Her favorite black dress, the tight one she'd worn to feel invincible, lay crumpled in a trash can by the bed. She leaned closer, and the stench hit her like a punch. Alcohol, sweat, and something suspiciously like vomit. She gagged, slapping a hand over her nose. Did I throw up on myself? The shame washed over her like a tidal wave, but a bigger, scarier question loomed. Who changed me into this shirt? She stumbled to the window, the river's slow churn mirroring the chaos in her head. Last night was her first Friday in London after moving from Manchester. She'd dumped Lucas, her ex of 4 years who'd cheated with some coworker named Becky. 2 months ago, packed her life into boxes, and fled to the big city for a fresh start. New apartment, new job at Grayson and Company starting Monday, new Sophia. She'd gone to the Velvet Room in Soho to unwind, a swanky bar with red velvet walls and dim lights that promised a classy escape. She remembered ordering a martini, then another, then a third, because Lucas's smug face kept popping into her mind, and she'd mumbled to her glass, "I'm worth more than that, you jerk." After that, Blackout City. A faint memory flickered, some sleazy guy with slicked back hair grinning at her, his hand on her shoulder. She'd shove him off, hadn't she? Then a deep voice cutting through the haze. "Take your hands off her." Real or imagined? She couldn't tell. Her head spun as she turned back to the bed, cradling it in her hands. "Focus, sophomore. You're a badass designer, not a damsel in distress." The door swung open, and she yelped, yanking the blanket up like a shield. A man stepped in, tall, maybe 6'2", with jet black hair combed back and eyes so icy blue they could have frozen the Thames. He wore a crisp black suit that screamed money, holding a steaming coffee mug with the calm of someone who owned the world. His face was sharp, chiseled, handsome in a way that made her want to hide under the bed. He looked at her, unfazed, like finding a half-naked stranger in his penthouse was just another Tuesday. "Who are you? Where am I?" she blurted, her voice cracking. Her hand shook, knocking the bedside lamp off the table. It crashed to the floor in a spectacular shatter, glass shards glinting like tiny accusations. She winced, cheeks flaming. Why in front of this guy? He smirked, not a full smile, more like he was amused but too cool to show it. "I'm Oliver Grayson," he said, his voice deep and smooth, with an edge that could cut glass. "This is my place. And you're heavy, you know." He stepped forward, setting the mug on the table, his eyes scanning her like she was a mildly interesting exhibit. Her jaw dropped. "My place? Wait, did anything happen between us last night?" Panic spiked, her fingers clutching the shirt's hem as her mind raced through worst-case scenarios. Drunk hookup, compromising photos, a one-way ticket to humiliation. She was Sophia Hamilton, control freak, award winner. Not this. Oliver tilted his head, a rare glint of humor in those cold eyes. "You threw up all over me," he said, deadpan, like he was reporting the weather. "And your dress. I had to change you because I couldn't let you lie in that mess. Don't worry, I'm not the type to take advantage of a drunk woman." He picked up a shard of the broken lamp, placing it on the table like it was no big deal. Her face burned hotter than a blowtorch. "You changed me," she stammered, picturing him peeling off her soaked dress while she was passed out. "You mean you saw everything?" He shrugged, expression blank. "I try not to look too much. But honestly, you're heavier than I expected. Getting you onto the bed wasn't easy." She blinked, torn between mortification and outrage. "Heavier than you expected? Did you just call me heavy?" She jumped up, forgetting the shirt's brevity, then plopped back down as it rode up her thighs. "I'm not heavy. I do yoga 3 times a week. I was just a little drunk." She waved her hands, sinking deeper into the awkwardness. "Sure," he said, a hint of sarcasm lacing his tone. "Last night, you were more like a sack of drunk potatoes than a yoga guru." He sipped his coffee, those blue eyes glinting with something dangerously close to a laugh. She took a deep breath, forcing her dignity to resurface. "All right, Mr. Grayson," she said, aiming for professional despite her racing pulse. "Thank you for whatever this is. But can you tell me what happened? I don't remember a thing." He set the mug down, leaning back with zero urgency. "I was at the Velvet Room for a client meeting. Saw you at the bar, alone, way past your limit, practically sliding off your stool. Some creeps started circling you, laughing, touching. One had greasy hair. The others looked like they shopped at the discount rack. You shoved one off, but you were too gone to fight. I stepped in, told them to get lost. They didn't argue." She nodded, a fuzzy memory of that greasy guy's cologne stinging her nose. "And then, you were mumbling about not being worth it," he continued, smirking. "I asked for your address, but you just giggled and said, 'London's so pretty.' So I brought you here. Then you puked on my favorite Armani jacket, bespoke from Milan, before collapsing. Your dress was a casualty too. I changed you. End of story." She groaned, burying her face in her hands. "I'm so sorry. I never drink like that. I just breakup blues. Thank you for saving me. I owe you." He shrugged again. "No need. I don't like seeing people harassed." He walked to a wardrobe, pulling out a sleek gray dress and a fur-lined coat. High-end stuff that made her Camden thrift finds look like rags. "Put these on and go. I don't do uninvited guests." She took them, fumbling so the coat hit the floor. As she bent to grab it, he quipped, "You got a talent for dropping things." "Side gig." "Very funny," she shot back, clinging to her last shred of pride. She darted to the bathroom, changed into the dress, perfect fit, like it was made for her, and stepped out. "Thanks again, Mr. Grayson. I'll get out of your hair." He handed her a crisp white business card, gold lettering spelling Oliver Grayson. "If you drop anything else, call me to pick it up," he said, smirking, the closest thing to a smile she'd seen. She nodded, muttering, "I'll try not to bother you again," and bolted for the elevator. Outside, London's drizzle hit her face as she hailed a taxi, clutching his card. Oliver Grayson, a name she wouldn't forget. Tomorrow, she'd start at Grayson and Company, blissfully unaware that her rescuer was her new boss. In her life, it was about to get a lot messier and a lot more interesting. Sophia Hamilton stood in front of the chipped mirror in her Camden apartment, smoothing down her navy dress like it was armor. It hugged her slim frame just right, paired with glossy black heels that clicked with purpose, and her light brown curls swept into a high ponytail that said, "I'm not here to mess around." Today was her first day at Grayson and Company, one of London's slickest fashion powerhouses, and she wasn't about to let the disaster of Friday night ruin it. Sure, she'd woken up in a stranger's penthouse, half naked in his shirt, after puking on his fancy jacket. Sure, she'd shattered a lamp and been called heavy by a guy who looked like he'd stepped out of a cologne ad. But that was the past, like 48 hours past. Today was a fresh start. New job, new Sophia, she muttered, grabbing her purse and striding out the door. The tube ride to central London was a blur of sweaty commuters and tinny headphone beats, but when she stepped off and saw the Grayson and Company building, her stomach did a little flip. It loomed over the financial district, all gleaming glass and steel, reflecting the rare winter sun like it was flexing. She straightened her shoulders, took a deep breath, and marched through the revolving doors like she owned the place. Inside, the lobby was a cathedral of chic, white walls splashed with edgy art, employees buzzing around in outfits so stylish they could have walked off a runway. Sophia smiled. This was her world. A receptionist with a headset and a perfect blowout directed her to the 15th floor for the new design team intro. She'd spent all weekend prepping her presentation, a bold collection called London Reborn, mixing classic British vibes like tweed with modern cuts and pops of color. If it landed, it'd be her ticket to burying Lucas's betrayal and her Manchester ghost for good. The meeting room was a sleek box of glass and chrome, buzzing with tense energy. Grayson and Company was gunning for a big Paris contract, and the design team was the linchpin. Sophia set up her laptop and sketches, nodding at a few colleagues, artsy types with sharp cheekbones and sharper opinions. She reviewed her slides, whispering to herself, "Stay cool, sophomore. You've got this." Then the door swung open, and her world tilted. A man strode in, tall, black hair swept back, dressed in a deep gray suit that screamed, "I'm in charge." His icy blue eyes swept the room like a hawk, and that cool, commanding vibe hit her like a brick. She was adjusting her papers when she looked up, and, oh no, Oliver Grayson, the guy who'd peeled her out of a vomit-soaked dress. The guy who'd handed her coffee while she sat in his penthouse, blushing and babbling. The guy who'd smirked and called her a sack of drunk potatoes. He's the CEO? Her heart plummeted like an elevator with a snapped cable. No way, she thought, forcing her face into a neutral mask. Oliver took his spot at the head of the table, crossing his legs with that infuriating calm. "Hello, everyone. I'm Oliver Grayson," he said, his deep voice rolling through the room like thunder. "Today, I want to hear ideas from a new team. We've got a big contract to win. Let's get started." His gaze flicked over her, lingering just long enough for a faint smirk to twitch his lips, like he knew her secret and wasn't telling. She gripped her pen, so hard it might have snapped. "Stay professional," she chanted inwardly. This was work, not his penthouse. She couldn't let Friday night tank her first impression with her boss, even if he'd seen her at her absolute worst, sprawled out, drunk, and drooling on his sofa. When her turn came, she stood, cleared her throat, and launched in. "Hi, everyone. I'm Sophia Hamilton," she said, voice steady despite the sweat prickling her neck. "My idea is London Reborn, blending traditional materials like tweed with modern tailoring and bold colors. It's a bridge between British heritage and the global market, targeting younger clients while keeping that luxury edge." She clicked through her slides, sketches of asymmetrical coats, vibrant evening gowns with plaid twists, market stats showing trends in Asia and the US. The room went quiet, a few heads nodding. She felt a flicker of pride until Oliver spoke. "Ms. Hamilton," he said, his tone icy but curious, "do you think this could be done in 3 months?" His blue eyes locked on hers, and she swore she saw a glint of something. Amusement? Challenge? Absolutely, Mr. Grayson, she replied, chin up. With the right team, I can speed it up without skimping on quality. I pulled off a similar project in Manchester in 2 months, and it crushed it. She turned to the whiteboard, ready to jot down notes, when, clatter, her pen slipped from her fingers and rolled straight to Oliver's polished shoes. The room froze. A couple of soft chuckles broke the silence. Her face flamed as she bent to grab it, but Oliver beat her to it, leaning down with that damn smirk. You really have a knack for dropping things, he murmured, low enough for just her to hear, handing it back. Thanks, she mumbled, snatching it and pretending the floor hadn't just swallowed her dignity. She powered through the Q&A, fielding questions about fabric and pricing with a smile, until a colleague piped up, "What about accessories?" "Great idea," she said, perking up. "I'd go with minimalist jewelry, recycled silver, big on sustainability. It's trending hard right now." Oliver nodded slightly, scribbling in his notebook, but stayed silent. She sat down, heart pounding from the pressure, and a stare. When the meeting wrapped, her pitch got the green light as the Paris contract centerpiece. Colleagues clapped her on the back, and Oliver gave a rare nod. "Well done, Ms. Hamilton," he said, his gaze lingering before he walked out. She exhaled, a mix of triumph and unease swirling in her chest. She'd nailed it. So why did those blue eyes make her feel like a klutz all over again? A week later, the news hit. Grayson and Company won the contract. Millions of pounds, thanks to London Reborn. Sophia was the office rock star, colleagues swarming her with congrats. During lunch, she sat alone in the break room, sipping tea, when Oliver appeared in the doorway. He watched her for a beat, then strolled over. "You did better than I expected," he said, his voice cool, but with a flicker of warmth. She looked up, managing a faint smile. "Thanks, Mr. Grayson. Just doing my job." He smirked. "And dropping your stuff too, right?" She laughed. First time she'd felt at ease with him. "Maybe I should focus more when you're around," she shot back, a hint of sass creeping in. He didn't reply, just nodded and walked off. But inside, a thought nagged him. She wasn't just talented, she was interesting. Back in the design room, Sophia dove into her sketches, determined to lock down her spot at Grayson and Company. No distractions, not even Oliver Grayson. Yet when she glanced up and caught him watching her through the glass from the upper floor, her heart skipped a beat. Trouble was brewing, and she had no idea how deep it'd get. Sophia Hamilton stepped into the Grayson and Company design room with the kind of determination that could have powered a small city. After nailing the Paris contract with London Reborn, she'd carved out a solid spot on the team, and she wasn't about to let anything or anyone shake her focus. Especially not Oliver Grayson, her icy hot boss, who'd somehow gone from her reluctant rescuer to the guy who made her drop things like a nervous teenager. It wasn't that he was rude or unprofessional. No, it was worse. Every time he got close, she turned into a walking disaster. The pen incident in the meeting room still haunted her nightmares. She adjusted the stack of sketches in her arms, muttering, "Stay away from him, sophomore." That's the plan. The design room was her happy place, a chaotic paradise of fabric swatches, half-finished drafts, and a faint whiff of glue and stale coffee. Sewing machines hummed like a low-key orchestra, and sunlight streamed through the windows, glinting off scissors and pins scattered across the tables. She plopped down at her desk, opened her laptop, and dove in her next big thing, a collection for London Fashion Week. This was her shot to turn London Reborn into a runway legend. Tweed coats with funky, asymmetrical cuts, paired with deep reds and emerald greens. Classic, but with a twist that screamed Sophia. She was mid-sketch when a murmur rippled through the room. She looked up, and there he was, Oliver, strolling in like he owned the place. Which, technically, he did. He ditched the suit jacket today, sleeves rolled up on a crisp white shirt, looking less CEO and more human. But those blue eyes still cut through the air like lasers, landing on her. She ducked her head, pretending to be super in her sketch, praying he'd bypass her desk. No such luck. "Ms. Hamilton," he said, his deep voice slicing through the hum. "I need your advice on something." He stopped right in front of her, setting a stack of papers down with a soft thud. She gripped her pencil like it was a lifeline, forcing a smile. "Yes, Mr. Grayson? What's up? Please don't drop anything. Please don't drop anything. I've got an event tonight," he said, leaning against her desk just enough to make her pulse jump. "Charity gala. Need an opinion on what to wear." "You're a designer, right?" She blinked. Was he serious? "You're the CEO of a fashion empire," she said, a little sass slipping out. "Can't you pick something yourself?" He smirked, that half smile that made her want to both punch him and hide. "I want input from the person who just won me Paris. You free?" She wanted to say no, to bolt out the door and avoid this whole vibe, but those eyes pinned her in place. "Fine," she sighed, standing up and trailing him out of the room, keeping a safe 3-foot buffer. They headed upstairs to his office, a minimalist masterpiece of dark wood and glass, with a wardrobe that could have doubled as a boutique. He flung it open, revealing a lineup of suits that probably cost more than her apartment. "What should I wear to a gala?" he asked, stepping aside. She eyed the options, then plucked a deep blue suit and a white shirt. "This," she said, handing it over. "The blue works with your skin, and the cut's formal but not stiff. You'll look good. Not that you need help," she thought, biting her tongue. He nodded, inspecting it. "You've got a good eye." His voice had a rare, approving edge, and she smiled, until she turned to grab her purse and brushed a stack of sketches on his desk. They hit the floor in a glorious cascade, papers fluttering like panicked birds. "Oh God, I'm sorry," she yelped, dropping to her knees to scoop them up. He bent down too, and when they looked up, their faces were inches apart. Her heart slammed against her ribs. His breath smelled faintly of coffee, and those blue eyes locked on hers. He chuckled, soft, unexpected. "You really can't be near me without dropping something." She laughed too, tension melting for a split second. "Maybe I should stay farther away," she quipped, standing with the papers clutched to her chest. Avoiding him, though? Fat chance. 2 days later, she was in the storage room, elbow deep in fabric rolls, when a delivery guy popped in with a massive bouquet, white roses and carnations, tied with a ribbon. The card read, "Thanks for the advice." Oh gee, she stared at it, muttering, "Is he kidding?" Colleagues nearby snickered. "Looks like the boss is a crush, Sophia," one teased. She rolled her eyes, but her cheeks went pink. Why does he keep doing this? That weekend, during a team meeting for Fashion Week, Oliver showed up again. She was mid-rant, prototypes in 2 weeks, people. Coats, dresses, accessories, one focus each. "Let's make Grayson and company shine." When he leaned against the doorframe, listening, he nodded, then cut in. "I agree, but I want Miss Hamilton to oversee it all." She turned, surprised. "Me?" He shrugged. "You nailed Paris. I trust you." He stepped closer to check her sketches, his shoulder brushing hers. She flinched, her hand slipped, and whoosh, the drawings hit the floor again. The rustle was deafening. She wanted to evaporate. He smirked, bending to help. "Maybe I should stand farther away to save my paperwork." They both laughed, and for the first time, he didn't feel like just a cold CEO. The Fashion Week grind kicked into overdrive. Sophia led the team like a general, late nights, triple-checking stitches, tweaking designs until they sang. She wanted London Reborn to be a story, not just clothes, renewal, grit her. Oliver started dropping by more, sometimes with coffee for everyone, though his eyes lingered on her a beat too long. She caught him watching once, and he didn't look away. What's his deal? The night before the show, she was in the fitting room, adjusting a dress on a mannequin, when he appeared, hands in his pockets. "Don't you ever rest?" he asked. "Not until it's done," she said, pinning at him. "What about you? CEOs don't sleep?" He smirked. "I want to see what you do with this." She grinned. "Then you won't be disappointed." London Fashion Week hit Somerset House like a storm. The Grand Hall glowed under blazing lights, packed with Vogue editors and investors who'd flown in from everywhere. Where models hit the runway, tweed coats with jagged edges, red gowns that flowed like wine, silver accessories glinting like stars, the crowd lost it. Thunderous applause rained down as Sophia took her bow, spotting Oliver in the front row, nodding with a smile that wasn't so rare anymore. Backstage, Grayson and Company was the name on everyone's lips. London Reborn was dubbed the season's knockout, and offers piled up at her feet. She stood alone, catching her breath, when Oliver approached. "You did it," he said, voice low and warm. "We did it, Mr. Grayson," she corrected, smiling. "Call me Oliver," he said, smirking. "And next time, don't drop your sketches when I'm around, okay?" "No promises," she laughed. They stood there, the backstage chaos buzzing around them, and something shifted. Not quite work, not quite friendship, but a spark neither was ready to name. Trouble was, it wasn't going anywhere. Sophia Hamilton sat in the Grayson and Company design room, her fingers brushing a swatch of pearl-colored silk like it was a fragile dream. London Fashion Week's success still buzzed in her veins. Her London Reborn collection had turned heads, landed Grayson and Company on every fashion blog worth a damn, and made her feel like she'd finally planted her flag in this city. But the fashion world didn't do downtime. She was already neck-deep in a new project, Eastern Echoes, a bold mashup of sleek London style and elegant Asian vibes. Think modernized AO dye, silk dresses with hand-stitched patterns aimed at cracking the booming Asian market. She leaned back in her chair, sketching a kimono-inspired coat, when a soft knock jolted her. Oliver Grayson stepped in, holding a coffee cup, his sharp blue eyes softened by the morning light. He'd swapped the suit for a fitted black shirt, looking less like a CEO and more like a guy who might actually smile if you caught him off guard. "Brought you coffee," he said, setting it on her desk. She grinned, taking it. "Thanks, Oliver." Calling him by his first name still felt weird, like she'd snuck into a VIP club. But after Fashion Week, the walls between them had started to crack. "How's Eastern Echoes looking?" he asked, sliding into the chair across from her, his gaze drifting over her sketches. She slid a draft his way. "I'm playing with modern AO dye, silk, embroidered details. It'll be the star of the show." He nodded, studying it with that focus she'd come to admire. "I like it, but speed it up. Japanese partners want a meeting in 3 weeks." "I'll make it happen," she said, and they dove into details, fabrics, colors, timelines. Oliver wasn't just a boss. He had an eye for design that sharpened her ideas, and his quiet care, like this coffee run, made him less of an enigma. As he stood to leave, he turned back. "Don't work too late. Rest matters." "You too, Oliver," she shot back, smiling. But that peace? It didn't last. 2 days later, she was at a cafe near the office, fork halfway to her mouth with a sad excuse for a salad, when a voice sliced through the hum. "Sophia." She turned, and her heart stopped like someone had yanked the plug. Lucas Carter, her ex, stood there, blonde hair mussed, brown eyes dripping with regret, wrapped in a long coat that made him look like a lost puppy who'd wandered too far from Manchester. "Lucas," she said, setting her fork down so hard it clinked. "What are you doing here?" He slid into the seat across from her without asking, because boundaries were never his thing. "I'm in London for work," he said, voice shaky. "But I needed to see you. I regret it, Soph. What I did was stupid. I want you back." She stared, fork frozen midair. 4 years together, cozy dinners, promises of forever, shattered when he confessed to sleeping with Becky from accounting. Now he was here, begging. "Are you serious?" she asked, sarcasm dripping. "You think sorry fixes everything?" He grabbed her hand across the table, eyes pleading. "You're the best thing I ever had. I was an idiot to lose you. Give me a chance, please." She yanked her hand back, standing. "I need time to think." She stormed out, her mind a blender on high. Anger, hurt, confusion. Back at the office, she tried to bury herself in work, but Lucas's face kept popping up like a bad ad. Did she still care? Or was it just old baggage? Oliver noticed something was off when he swung by later. "You okay?" he asked, leaning against her desk. She nodded, but her hand shook, dropping her pencil. He picked it up, handing it back with a raised brow. "I'm fine," she lied, forcing a smile. He didn't push, but she could feel his eyes linger. Lucas didn't let up, texts nonstop, flowers showing up, memories dredged up like mud from a riverbed. She didn't want him back, but his return rattled her, blurring her feelings for Oliver. And Oliver? He was creeping closer. Late nights in the design room became their thing. Him bringing pizza or sushi, her sketching while they talked. One night, over a box of pepperoni, he asked, "What do you love about this job?" She paused, pizza slice dangling. "Making something that lasts." "You." He smirked. "Same. Like what you're doing." The space between them shrank, not just in words, but little moves, his hand brushing hers over fabric, a shared laugh over a bad stitch. He upped the ante one day, inviting her to dinner at a cozy Covent Garden spot, soft yellow lights glowing on his face. "What about kimonos for Eastern echoes?" he asked, sipping wine. "Good call," she said. "Pair them with silk dresses, light but sharp." Talk drifted from work to personal, his London childhood, her design dreams as a kid. As they left, he draped his coat over her shoulders against the chill. "Don't make me change your clothes again," he teased. "I'm not drunk this time." She laughed, but the warmth lingered. Then Lucas showed up at the office entrance a few days later, holding a ridiculous bouquet, yelling, "Sophia, I love you. I won't give up." She froze, colleagues whispering like nosy bees. Oliver stepped out of the elevator, saw it all, and turned away, a flicker of something in his eyes she didn't catch. After that, he got weird, edgy, distant, though he hid it behind extra focus on Eastern echoes. One night, as they worked late, he slid sushi her way. "You're overworking." "So are you," she shot back, smiling. He looked at her, voice low. "I don't want you burning out. This matters to both of us." For 2 weeks, they were a machine, picking embroidered silk, testing kimonos, him even cutting fabric with her, suggesting cherry blossom details. Their rhythm was electric, and she felt it, something deeper than work. But Lucas kept hovering, calls, gate stakeouts, until Oliver saw him again, misreading it all. The night before Eastern Echo's launch at a Grand Mayfair hall, they did a final check. Silk AO dye shimmered, kimono dress hybrids glowed, pearl accessories sparkled. Oliver stood beside her. "You've done the impossible." "We did," she said, smiling. He turned, serious. "Sophia, her phone rang. "Lucas." He stopped, jaw tight. The launch was a supernova. Eastern Echoes stormed the industry, orders flooding from Japan, Korea, China. Sophia soaked in the applause on stage, but her heart was heavy. Backstage, Oliver found her. "Congrats," he said, voice strained. "Thanks, Oliver. Couldn't have done it without you," she replied. He nodded, then asked, "That guy, who is he?" She sighed. "My ex. He wants me back, but I haven't decided." His eyes flashed, pain quick and gone. "You deserve the best," he said, walking off. She stood there, lights dazzling, wondering what her heart wanted, Lucas's past or Oliver's present. The answer was closer than she knew. Sophia Hamilton stood backstage at the Eastern Echo's launch, clutching a glass of water so cold it numbed her fingers. The Grand Mayfair hall still hummed with fading applause. Her collection of silk AO dye, kimono dress hybrids, and pearl accessories had just set the fashion world ablaze. Grayson and Company was riding a tsunami of orders from Japan, Korea, and China, and she'd stood on stage, soaking in the cheers like a rock star. But now she felt hollow, like someone had scooped out her insides and left her swaying in the spotlight's afterglow. Two men were spinning her head in opposite directions. Lucas Carter, her ex who'd crashed back into her life like a bad sequel, and Oliver Grayson, the cold enigma who'd somehow turned into her anchor. Oliver's last words backstage, "You deserve the best," echoed in her skull as she watched him vanish into the crowd. What was that tone? Melancholy? Professional courtesy? Did he care? Or was she just another employee to him? She trudged back to the design room at midnight, the office silent except for the faint drip of a leaky faucet. Collapsing in her chair, she stared at the silk scraps and sketches littering her desk. Lucas wanted her back, but her heart didn't race for him anymore. Oliver, though, he never said much, but the late-night coffee runs, the way he'd cut fabric with her until dawn, that smirk when she dropped something, it all stuck to her like glue. She grabbed a pencil, sketching a coat inspired by London rain, jagged cuts like falling drops, but her hand shook and it clattered to the floor. "I can't keep doing this," she muttered, picking it up. She needed answers. Lucas had to go, and Oliver, she had to know where they stood, even if it meant cracking open her chest and spilling everything. The next day, her phone buzzed with a text from Lucas. Meet me at the cafe near the office, 6 p.m. One last time, please. She stared at it, thumb hovering over delete, but sighed and typed back fine. Closure was overdue. She threw on a long gray coat, grabbed an umbrella, and stepped out as a drizzle started. London's signature wet welcome. The cafe's yellow lights spilled onto the slick pavement like melted butter. Lucas was already there, standing as she walked in, blonde hair a mess, brown eyes pleading, rougher than the Manchester days. Thanks for coming, he said, voice wobbly. She sat, hands gripping the table. Go ahead, Lucas. He took a shaky breath. I know I don't deserve you after what I did, but you're the best thing I ever had, sophomore. I was an idiot to lose you. I love you, I want you back. His eyes begged, like she held his whole world in her hands. She listened, but it was like hearing rain through a window, distant, unmoving. She remembered Manchester, candlelit nights, his promises, then the day he dropped the cheating bomb, shattering a wine glass and her trust. Lucas, she cut in, calm but firm, I loved you once, but it's over. I can't go back. He grabbed her hand, squeezing. Don't say that. I'll do anything. Give me a chance. She pulled free, standing. I'm sorry. Goodbye. She walked out, rain picking up, and opened her umbrella. Telling him no felt like kicking off a heavy boot. She was done with the past. And then it hit her, clear as the streetlights, cutting through the downpour. She loved Oliver. His quiet strength, his dry humor, the way he made her stumble. It was him. Unbeknownst to her, Oliver was driving by, his sleek black car slicing through the fog. Through the steamed-up window, he saw her with Lucas gripping her hand, pleading, Sophia standing there like she was deciding. His knuckles whitened on the steering wheel. She's choosing him, he thought, and floored it, speeding off with a chest full of lead. He'd kept his distance to protect himself, but now he vowed to lock his heart up tight. For 3 days, he ghosted her. No design room visits, no meetings, just curt emails. Ms. Hamilton, update me on Eastern Echoes when you can. She felt the shift, a cold wall where warmth used to be. Colleagues noticed too. What's up with the boss? One asked. She forced a smile, but her gut twisted. On day 4, news dropped. Eastern Echoes was up for Collection of the Year at the British Fashion Awards. A massive chance, but she needed Oliver, not just for work, but to fix whatever had gone wrong. At 8 p.m., with rain pounding like a tantrum, she grabbed her umbrella, pulled up her coat's hood, and marched to his Mayfair penthouse, the place where this whole mess started. The wind howled, lashing rain across her face. She buzzed his door, but her wet hand slipped, and the umbrella tumbled into the gutter, rolling away like a lost cause. She didn't chase it, just stood there, soaked, hair plastered her cheeks, breath puffing in the cold. Oliver opened the door in a gray tee and jeans, hair damp like he'd just walked in. His blue eyes widened. Sophia, what are you doing out here? She stepped inside, water dripping onto his pristine floor. I need to talk, she said, teeth chattering but voice steady. He crossed his arms, tone frosty. About what? You and your ex patched things up? I saw you at the cafe. Her jaw dropped. You saw me with Lucas? That's why you've been dodging me. He nodded, eyes darkening. I didn't want to get in the way if you picked him. Be happy. I respect that. He turned, but she shouted over the rain's roar. You're such an idiot. She lunged, grabbing his arm to yank him back, but the wet floor betrayed her. She slipped, crashing into him, nearly toppling them both. He caught her, chuckling to spite himself. Try to wreck my house. Blushing, she clung to his arm. Listen first. I turned Lucas down. I met him to end it, not restart it. He frowned. Then why was he holding your hand? Because he wouldn't let go, she snapped, water flying as she shook her head. I don't love him anymore. He stood still, breathing hard. She pressed on, voice trembling. I don't know when it started, but you mean more to me than anyone. I dropped my umbrella in this stupid rain to tell you that. You don't get to misunderstand and ghost me. She gripped his hand. eyes fierce despite her drowned cat look. He stared, then laughed, a big, unguarded sound she'd never heard. "You look like a soaked kitten and still act this tough," he said, pulling her into his arms. "I thought I'd lost you. Seeing you with him, I couldn't handle it." She leaned into his chest, laughing through tears and rain. "Why didn't you ask, you dope?" He smirked. "Scared you'd say, 'Yeah, I picked him. I suck at this.'" He kissed her forehead, then her lips, soft, intense, like they'd both been holding their breath for this. She kissed back, arms around his neck, his warmth chasing off the chill. Pulling apart, he grinned. "You're soaked. Need my shirt again?" "Just this once," she laughed. "But don't call me heavy." He handed her a dry shirt, and they sat by the fireplace, joking like the mix-up never happened. From there, they prepped for the British Fashion Awards, Eastern Echo's Snag Collection of the Year at Royal Albert Hall, and on stage, he held her hand under the lights. Later, on a balcony overlooking London's glow, he said, "I'm bad at romance, but I love you, Sophia." "I love you too, Oliver," she replied, leaning into him. The rain had stopped, and they knew they'd face everything together now. Fashion, love, all of it. Sophia Hamilton stood in the new Grayson and Company design room, cradling a piece of golden silk like it was a slice of sunshine. Early morning light poured through the giant windows of their shiny Shoreditch headquarters, bouncing off tables piled with sketches, fabric scraps, and colorful thread spools that looked like a kid's candy stash. 6 months had zipped by since that rainy night at Oliver's penthouse. The night she'd slipped, crashed into him, and accidentally spilled her heart all over his polished floor. Now, life was a whole new runway, and she was strutting it with him by her side. After Eastern Echo's Snag Collection of the Year at the British Fashion Awards, Grayson and Company had blown up, orders flooding in from Asia, Europe, the US like a tidal wave of cash and praise. She wasn't just a new girl from Manchester anymore. She was creative director, standing shoulder to shoulder with Oliver, who'd softened from icy still a little icy, but only to everyone else. Together, they'd launched timeless threads, flowing silk dresses with hand-stitched flowers, accessories recycled from old metals, a love letter to sustainability and each other. They'd argue over colors, her yelling, "Emerald green or bust," him countering, "Too loud, try navy," but it always ended with a laugh and his hand finding hers. Beyond the office, life was simpler, sweeter. Weekends meant walks along the Thames, Oliver spinning tales of his gloomy London childhood while she sketched ducks on napkins. She'd drag him to Camden cafes, doodling while he read the paper, pretending he wasn't sneaking peeks at her. Once, he tried sewing to fix a dress sample, botched it so bad the fabric looked like a toddler's art project. She'd laughed until tears streamed down her face. "I'm a CEO, not a tailor," he'd protested, but his eyes danced seeing her happy. No big announcements, no tabloid splash. Their love was quiet, but at Grayson and Company, everyone knew. Colleagues teased her when Oliver dropped by with coffee or daisies, and she'd shrug, "He's just being nice," though her grin gave her away. This Sunday morning, she woke up in his Mayfair penthouse, sunlight sneaking through the curtains to warm her face. The blanket slipped off her shoulder, and she realized she was in his oversized white shirt again, same as that first drunken night. But this time, no panic, no shame, just a cozy glow spreading through her like hot tea. She sat up, tugging the shirt down, and glanced around. The room was still minimalist, black leather, glass table. But now it had her fingerprints, a sketch of Tower Bridge on the wall, a green pillow she'd insisted on to fix his sterile vibe, and the smell of coffee drifting from the kitchen. She smiled, running a hand through her curls, replaying their journey like a highlight reel. That Soho bar where she'd puked on his Armani jacket. The meeting where she dropped her pen and blushed like a fool. Late nights cutting fabric, debating designs, him smirking when she fumbled. The rainy confession, her umbrella rolling away, her slipping into him, his big laugh calling her a fierce wet cat. Their first kiss, his "I love you," under Royal Albert Hall's lights. It was messy, ridiculous, perfect. The door creaked open, and Oliver walked in with a wooden tray, 2 mugs, croissants still warm from the oven. He wore a gray tee and pants, hair tousled, blue eyes brightening when they met hers. "You're awake," he said, setting the tray on the bedside table. "Thought you'd sleep till noon after last night's sketch marathon." She laughed, pulling the blanket up. "I don't oversleep. I just like lounging." He handed her a mug, sitting beside her. "Wearing my shirt again? Planning to steal it permanently?" "It's comfy," she smirked, sipping coffee. "You didn't mind the first time." He chuckled, that warm, low sound filling the room. "That time, you were heavier than I expected. You're lighter now. Guess I'm taking good care of you." She punched his shoulder playfully. "Call me heavy again, and you're sleeping on the couch." "I do yoga, mister." He grabbed her hand, pulling her close. "I know, and I like taking care of you, heavy or not." She leaned into his chest, his heartbeat steady under her ear, a quiet happiness settling in. "You know," she said, softening, "I thought I'd be alone forever after Lucas. Then you showed up, picking up my messes." He kissed her hair. "Me too, but you stumbled in, dropping stuff everywhere, and flipped my world." They sat there, munching croissants, chatting about Grayson and Company's next moves, a Paris branch, a kid's line, maybe a trip just for them. No work allowed. Sunlight glinted off the Thames outside, and she looked at him. "Thanks for picking me up, literally and figuratively." He smiled, pulling her into a long hug. "Thanks for staying." They flopped back on the bed, tangled together, knowing rain or shine. They'd face it all, building a fashion empire and a love story, one clumsy, beautiful step at a time.